So here we are. This is our kickoff for the Wampanoag dinner. It's officially our first 2020 event, even though it's not 2020 yet, it's 2019. This is a dinner. We're holding it at the lovely Camp Kiwanee. As you can see, we've got Paula Peters, who is from the Wampanoag tribe, coming in, speaking to us about the exhibit that we're going to have. And the exhibit is going to be at Thomas Mill throughout the month of August with a scheduled TBD because it will be staffed by volunteers. But stay tuned and check us out on Facebook and you'll see when we'll be open. We hope to be open as often as possible. Again, it will be down at Thomas Mill. It's part of the 400th, Plymouth 400th anniversary exhibit, and they've lent it to us for a small fee so that we can use it to celebrate our 200th and the Native Americans that was so important to the town of Hanson. So here we are, and more to come later.
Attention for a minute, please. First of all, we want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you so much. In a minute, we're going to have Marcus come up here and say a few words. But as you're finishing your dinner and enjoying your desserts, I want to remind you that we have a 50-50 donation raffle going on right now. And so, give it up for that. There he is, Mark's right there, the green tickets. And then also we have some beautiful baskets that were donated by different people. And right now it's open for silent auction, so if you could do that. We've got the swag table in the back. Take a look and see what we have there for you as we celebrate, or getting to celebrate, our 200 years next year. All right. And we will have our guest speaker in a few minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Hanson's 200th Anniversary Committee's presentation of Paula Peters. She's a well-known activist and member of the Wampanoag tribe. She pushed for tribal federal recognition, which was eventually gained in 2007. Tonight she will be doing a talk on critical backstory to colonization. Paula, the stage is yours.
Oininakan, Natasawi Songkwabin, Witamas Masapiak. So, good evening, everyone. My name traditionally is Songkwabin, and I'm from Mashpee. I am a Mashpee Wampanoag. I came here with this big, long speech. All of these pages, which my friend Keith reviewed, and he said, toss that. Thank you for welcoming me here to Hanson. I used to go to Bridgewater State College. And I went in from Plymouth every day where I lived and drove by the road to Hanson and never went down that road. So this is really unique for me. I'm going to stand away from that. Can everybody hear me okay?
You have to get up on top of the mic. Get on top of the mic.
Get on, yeah, but that's when that screeching
It'll
noise.
stop it.
Okay, it'll stop, he says.
Yeah, get on top of the mic, though.
On top of the mic.
There you go.
And I was invited here to speak because I gather that Hanson will be getting the exhibit, the Our Story exhibit, next week. And I am the producer of the Our Story exhibit. I've worn so many hats in my lifetime that this is the one I'm wearing right now, as an independent scholar of Wampanoag history and Native history in New England. And was asked some years ago to participate in Plymouth 400, and it was hard. It was a hard decision as a Native person to participate in something that commemorates the arrival of the colonists, whose really sole mission was to eliminate us, and there was a history behind the history. There was a history behind the involvement, because on the 350th anniversary of the arrival of the Mayflower, a Native person was invited to speak there. Only his remarks were censored. And so that man, he was a Quina Wampanoag elder, Frank Wamsuda James, chose instead to give his remarks at the top of Coles Hill under the statue of Usimiquin, Massasoit Usimiquin, and it became the first annual National Day of Mourning, which is now recognized across the country and continues to be recognized in Plymouth on the third Thursday of November every year, which kind of broke up the Pilgrim's Progress Parade in a pretty uncomfortable way for Plymouth. That first year it happened back in 1970. So I think they probably didn't want to see anything like that happen again. Although I have to say that we as citizens of this region have come a long way, both as non-native citizens and as native citizens. And our story has become more highly regarded, although is still very much marginalized. And so that's why the topic of my talk, and I thought I was going to be speaking to I don't know why, a different group, but you all are so warm and friendly and welcoming that I can't bear to give you. I mean, I could read the first line of this and you'd probably go, okay, throw it away. But it's important to talk about the backstory to colonization, because that's the piece that gets marginalized the most. I mean, how many of you have even questioned why Squanto spoke English? More to the point, how many of you just glazed that right over? All right, move on to the next. Yeah. And that's a critical story, because Squanto was captured in 1614, taken away from Patuxet as a slave, ends up being in London and trotted around London as a curiosity, while his people in Patuxet are dying of the plague at home. He finds his way home again in 1619, but by that time everyone is gone. Everyone has either died or fled Patuxet of the plague. The following year, the Mayflower comes and it lands in Patuxet. Squanto is the sole heir to Patuxent. He's the only one left. And most people don't know that backstory, because that was the kind of story that the organizers of the 350th commemoration of the Mayflower arrival didn't want Frank James to tell. They didn't want that story told. That was what they censored. That and the story of the injustice that occurred after colonization and how colonization really hurt the Wampanoag people. So it's been my job, really, to bring that story to the forefront this time around. At first it was really hard because there were people in my tribe that really felt like this isn't a good idea. You know, you're going to become involved with this organizing committee, and they're not going to give you your voice. They're not going to tell you, they're going to tell you what you can and cannot say. One thing I want to assure you about the exhibit that's coming to Hanson for the month of August is that it is completely our story. All of the, we had complete editorial and content control over everything. All of the people who are depicted in either the photographs or the videos that you'll be able to see are all Wampanoag people. So it truly is our story, and I've been very proud to be a part of that, and it took some convincing. And now we have a great deal of support from the Wampanoag community, and also it has been widely accepted wherever it goes. But we started out with this exhibit when Plymouth 400 said, well, yeah, we're doing this, it's going to be 400 years, it's going to be 2020. And I said, no. 400 years for the Wampanoag starts in 2014, because that would be the 400th anniversary of when Squanto was taken. That's the story that needs to get in front of people. They need to understand why, when he greeted the Pilgrims, he could greet them in their own language, because he'd spent 6 years learning it from them. And they needed to be able to humanize what happened to those people. What happens to someone who gets thrown in the belly of a dark, dank ship with maybe a dozen or more of his brothers and carted off to God knows where, then sold off into slavery? It's a horrible reality. So we wanted to put a point on that horrible reality. One of the things that you'll see in this exhibit is there are impact statements, and it was one of the proudest moments that I had in doing this, because I recruited people from the tribe to come, and I didn't want them to try and bring on an accent or, you know, try to emulate somebody from the 17th century in some way that was unnatural to them. I said, I want you to be yourselves. Be the mother of those children, and their father was just taken away, and you don't know where he is or if you'll ever see him again. That's the kind of impact statements that you're going to find in the Captured 1614 exhibit. And they're really, really very beautifully done by the people that engaged in that part. I was really proud of these folks because they really had to channel it. We met together prior to doing these impact statement videos. We gathered and we had ceremony and prayer over it so that we really did represent these ancestors properly. That was very important to all of us. So there's an authenticity about this exhibit that I hope you feel while you're there and while you're visiting it. Pretty quickly into doing the exhibit, we decided that we wanted to not just stop with 1614. There was so many other things that we needed to bring to the forefront in terms of the backstory. There was just so much to say between 1614 and 2020, and 1620, I mean. But, So we decided that we would add a theme every year, and that's gone pretty beautifully. I mean, the first year we added a theme about territory and talking about our messenger runners. We added a theme at one point about our powwow to sort of bring things current. In 2016, we added a theme about the Great Dying, which so many people are unaware of. I mean, how many people here knew about the Great Dying? Show of hands, real quick. Wow. Which was a massive epidemic. It was a virgin soil epidemic, which means that the people here, it would be like somebody from Mars comes in and walks into this room with all good intentions, great goodwill, but he has this, it has this little bug of some kind. All well and good for the Martian, but not for us, because we have absolutely no immunities to it. Within a couple of weeks, we're all dead. That's what happened to coastal tribes from Monhegan in Maine to the tip of Cape Cod, from 1616 to 1619, which devastated the Wampanoag Nation. So by the time the Pilgrims arrived, Massasoit Usamiquin, of which I do want to back up for a second. You'll notice I said his name. Massasoit, it's the name of a college, it's the name of a street, it's all kinds of things, and people think that that was his name. The statue on Coles Hills says his name is Massasoit. Massasoit is a title. It would be like calling the Queen of England just Queen, not Queen Elizabeth. His name was Usamiquin, which means yellow feather, and so at every opportunity I have, I want to speak his name. So Massasoit Usamiquin was in a unique position where to the south and west of Wampanoag territory was the Narragansetts, who had not been touched by the plague at all. So they were strong and trying to muscle in on the Wampanoag territory. And so to keep his people safe and preserve his territory, he made the agreement, the alliance with the colonists when they came. The colonists were in a similar position, feeling that half their numbers had died that first winter, just exposure and sickness and weakness. And so they were in a very weak position themselves. But the treaty that they made with each other, and it's a treaty that was spoken in English and written in English, and it's purported to be a treaty that's fair to both sides. But carefully read, you'll find that it is not. It was not a treaty that was fair to both sides. It was a treaty that I think had Usamiquin known exactly what it actually meant, he would never have agreed to. It was a treaty that threatened the sovereignty of the Wampanoag people, and ultimately it did take the sovereignty away. The exhibit beyond 1616, the Great Dying theme, what came after that was a theme about governance, which we thought was really important too, because there's the implication in history and a lot of historical writings that the Wampanoag were such savage and brutish. I mean, these are terms that you can pick right out of the journals. That savage, they're brutish, they have no religion. Of course, from people who spoke not a word of their language, there was a determination that the Wampanoag had no religion. And actually, there's one journal from Verrazano back in the 15th century, but still it was about his explorations here, and he wrote back to his king and he said, "Well, King, I've determined that these indigenous people, these people here, have absolutely no religion. I can't speak to them, but I tried using sign language and hands to find this out. That would be like me doing this. And that was what really guided them in determining the status of indigenous people was, the word of explorers who I believe really had an ulterior motive in reducing the native people to godless savage, because their manifest destiny was to come here and really colonize this land. There were like the astronauts going to the moon. There was a big race to get there. And so everybody's trying to come here. Colonization was the buzzword of the 17th century. Everybody had to get a spot, plant their flag. And the only way to do that was to take the land from the native people that were already living there. And you could take the land from the native people if they were deemed godless. So there was a lot of that going on. But it wasn't actually true. So I spend a lot of time explaining to people about the spirituality of both my ancestors and of our people today, because we're not godless people. And we believe very strongly in our spiritual leaders and our spiritual gods that have created us here and made us here. Archaeological evidence shows that the Wampanoag have been in this region for 13,000 years. So we feel a strong affinity to this land, this place. I felt a very strong affinity coming into Hanson today. It was a beautiful place I hadn't ever seen before. It seems like it's kind of preserved out here. It's a good thing nobody knows you're here. I know now, I might come back. So beyond this, which I keep wanting to throw away, although I'm a really good writer, so that's why I love when I write stuff down. And I'll maybe just read the conclusion of it, which isn't half as bad as the other 16 pages. So how about that? And then if you want to just talk to me or ask me questions, I'm way comfortable with all of that. And I want to thank Keith. Yeah, somebody give him an applause, because he's spared you all these other pages. 400 years after the Mayflower arrived in Patuxent, Plymouth Harbor is flush with boats. Fishing boats clearing the catch of the day at the town pier. Tour boats that ferry the curious out to sea to glimpse the flash of a whale's tail. And pleasure boats stacked neatly at the marina. At the State Pier, Mayflower II, a replica of a 17th century wooden sailing vessel with her canvas sails furled under triple masts and tarred rigging, stands out as the pride of the fleet. On the shore between the mouth of the town brook and the State Pier, a grandiose stone portico supported by Roman Doric columns provides a canopy for a sea-level enclosure protecting a celebrated boulder. Plymouth Rock, a storied stone that legend claims was the Pilgrims' natural wharf as they debarked the Mayflower, is the epicenter of the tourism that fuels the economy of modern-day Plymouth, Massachusetts. The Rock is a 7,000-pound silent witness to the vitality of the indigenous lives that thrived there for as many as 12,000 years before colonization. It also serves as a monument to forgetting them. Engraved on the face of the stone in large point Times New Roman font is the year 1620. It is the length to which the historical memory is encouraged to go to avoid knowing what comes before it. Thank you. Marcus is coming back.
Anybody have any questions or like to talk to Paula?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I know that the Native Americans in western Colorado area believed that nobody owned the land. Is that the same way as Europe?
Yes, that's true. That was somewhere on page 11, 12, or something like that. See, that's the neat thing about having written all this stuff down. But I like answering questions too. There was no deeded land, no boundaries, no ownership of land. The land, and that's part of the reason why the Narragansett, there was a threat of the Narragansett coming in and moving in on the Wampanoag territory, because if the Wampanoag weren't defending their territory, they would lose it. Not because they had a deed to it, but they had to defend their territory and use their territory for their homes, their land. And another thing that was really, really critically important was hunting territory, because that's how they endured, was hunting and fishing and all of those. But no, there was no ownership of land, and that was part of what was the huge downfall. It was really all about land. When the colonial courts came in and started creating deeds and having people sign away their rights to territory, there was not a common understanding of what that meant. And there was a great deal of latitude that was taken due to the language and understanding barrier. So thank you for asking that.
Do you think that Nathaniel Philbrook's book is a good depiction of the situation Mayflower will be?
Yeah, I've read his book. I've met Nathaniel Philbrook. There are parts of it that are mildly offensive to the Wampanoag. He depicts. I think it was Hobomok that he depicts as a devil or a demon, yeah. And there's some confusion around that. But I think overall he did a very good job. He's a great historical writer. There's some disagreement about some of the ways he interpreted Wampanoag characters, but overall it's his story. Okay, excellent question. I didn't get into it real deeply. I think that's on page 4. It's more fun to explain it. Thomas Hunt was the captain who took the 20 men. He took 20 men from Patuxet and then sailed on to Nauset on Cape Cod and took 7 more. He was part of a fleet, and not really a fleet, but there were 2 ships. And the first ship was captained by John Smith, who mapped the region. And that was the voyage in which he actually did map the region of Cape Cod. And he left Thomas Hunt behind. They had both gone to Patuxet Harbor, which is today's Plymouth Harbor. And he had instructed Thomas Hunt to just do some trading, parting trading with these native people. And John Smith had actually done a lot of work on that trip to really improve relations with the native people. And he had a lot of work to do, because a lot of the explorers that had come before him had developed a bad reputation among native people for doing things like capturing people and taking them away as slaves. And also just being not nice people in general. But he really had gone out of his way to ingratiate himself with the people. He took a lot of copious notes about what the region looked like, because for John Smith, the goal was to establish trade and also to establish locations for potential settlement for colonies, and he intended to come back. He had already, you may remember the name, John Smith, he had already established a colony, or helped to establish a colony in Virginia. That didn't work out so well, and it was partly due to poor relations with the native people there. So I think he didn't really want to repeat that. So when he left Thomas Hunt behind, he was really hopeful that Thomas Hunt would continue that goodwill, but of course he flipped it on its ear and took people as slaves instead. John Smith actually never returned, and it was partly because of that. He ended up writing a book about that, his memories, his memoir of, I think it's called Discoveries of New England in 1616. And in it, he did write something, which I am going to pick through and read for you because it kind of answers your question, if I can find it. And what was the second part you wanted to know? Who gave the plague? The plague, which could have been anything from a common cold to yellow fever, the plague most definitely came from interaction with traders. And it was not, I don't believe that anybody intentionally came and gave the people the plague. It was because it was what they call the virgin soil epidemic, as I explained, that they had no immunities and that it spread so quickly, and it killed so many people over a period of time. I don't think I'm going to find this quote because I just wrote too many pages of stuff. But I found a really neat piece that was in, I'll give you this instead. Most of what I am referring to, generally all of what I'm referring to when I talk about the history of my people is taken directly from the primary sources, who are the explorers and adventurers and the settlers who came, and they wrote everything. They wrote down what they did. One of the first ones to really embrace the native culture and tradition and try to understand what the lifestyles of the indigenous people was Roger Williams. And he actually got kicked out of Plymouth because he was too cozy with the Indians. And he wrote this in Williams, who endured his exile in the hospitality of the Narragansett before founding Rhode Island, developed a unique appreciation for his host that he juxtaposed with the arrogance of the English in a book called A Key into the Language of America. It was a poem, actually. Boast not, proud English, of thy birth and blood. Thy brother Indian is by birth as good. Of one blood God made him and thee and all, as wise, as fair, as strong, as personal. By nature, wrath's his portion, thine no more, till grace his soul and thine in Christ restore. Make sure thy second birth, else thou shalt see heaven ope to the Indians wild, but shut to thee. Kind of cool.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'll keep it to one that's kind of related. So it would be great if you had any, were able to share anything about Hanson in particular.
I can't.
Okay, all right.
Like I said, I've never been here. And I was telling your fine reporter, I've forgotten his name that quick. Drew. That I really don't know, what villages were nearby here, because I still don't know where I am. So I have to apologize for that. Yes, sir.
I have a question you might be able to help. Go ahead.
Could I ask a second?
Yeah, go for it.
So, coming here, you had to come on a street that was named Indian Head Street.
Yes.
And I live on that street, and I've never
Seen an Indian head?
No, I never wanted to be on that street, and I, don't often think about we should change the name of that street. And I wondered if, read things about the
Yeah.
history and the significance and
Right. Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me when someone says Indian Head is, and a lot of people don't know this, but right in downtown Plymouth, there's a place on Leiden Street where the head of Medicom was displayed on a pike for 25 years until it rotted off the pike. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. There is a lot of cultural appropriation and insensitivity that occurs around our culture, and it's like putting out fires and they're all around. I could stamp all day and not put out all the crazy fires that are, and when we try to, I remember telling this guy, I was sledding with my kids at a nearby hill, and a guy came and he was wearing the Washington Redskins knit cap, and it had like a faux mohawk made out of yarn, and it said Washington Redskins on it. And I'm not usually that confrontational, but my kids are right there and they see this, and this has been an ongoing issue, and it's at the epicenter of really all of the ignorance around cultural appropriation and about inappropriate use of racial slurs like Redskins. So I asked the guy very politely, I said, so would you be wearing that hat if it said the Washington Jews, or if it said the Washington Spics, or if it said the Washington Niggers? Would you be wearing that hat? And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, well, no, this is different. And I said, no, it isn't. It really isn't. If you knew the history behind that term, you would know that it's very insensitive and it's very offensive to me personally and to my kids who are here. And he was fine. He was talking to me. He said, I grew up in a place where there were Indians in my school, and they were cool with this, and there's lots of Indians that are just cool with this. And I said, well, there's, I think, so many more that are not. And you cannot imagine how hurtful that is. And then his wife starts to make the point for everybody, because they're loading up their stuff in their car, and I'm loading up my stuff in my car, and his wife starts to scream. And she said, it's just a name. Get over it. And I could tell this poor guy, he was so embarrassed that he just sort of hustled into the car. But the point was made that he wouldn't be wearing those hats with those other names. He could only wear it with the Redskin name on it. Why is that? I don't know. That's a question maybe some folks can answer for me.
Perhaps he just didn't do the name better.
He didn't what?
Perhaps he just didn't ever associate the term as being an offensive term.
But once he's been told that it's offensive term, and it's been a national campaign. I actually wrote a column. I used to be a journalist before. Told Drew all about. We have history. Drew and I now. I wrote a column about the offensive team names, and there are more than just one, but that's the one that jumps out. Back in 1997, and I remember it being a huge issue then. But again, thinking, okay, I'm going to speak out about this today, but I've got all these other fires to put out. I got to get my land back. I've got to recover my language for my children. I just got so many different things. I've got to get my federal recognition. I've got all these things I've got to do. And I got to circle back and worry about some ignorant people in the nation's capital who think it's okay to use a racial slur to call their team name. You shouldn't have to be told that that's offensive more than once, I would think. I'm sorry if there are Washington football fans in the room, but if there are, it really is offensive.
Does anybody on a Patriots fan?
I kind of grew up for a little while in Philadelphia, so me and my husband had like, I'm not much of a sports fan at all, but I wore the green on that day, I was in big trouble.
I had a question. I was wondering, it might actually help Mary. My name's Joe. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Joe.
Same thing. I could sit and talk to you all night long. In regards to the territory itself, so the Wampanoag it's a very broad,
Right.
a very broad term to describe an area that maybe we, particularly this area here, we're not in the Massachusetts region. We're not in the Nauset region, correct?
Right.
So,
Well, Nauset's were Wampanoag, and Matt, you're going to get, as part of your exhibit, you're going to get some controversy, because you're going to get, we did a territory section, and there is a map that shows, and it's really a linguistic map, because we've spent a lot of time in the past 20 years now or so recovering our language, and we are able to, through the documents, because our language has been recorded in deeds, in letters, in Bibles, in so many different ways. So we were able to trace our language, the use of the Wampanoag language, as we call it, all the way up to like Marblehead. And so our territory map shows that, and it upsets the people who are Massachusetts, the surviving Massachusetts people, which we honor and respect those people. And I have been trying to work with them for some time to rework the map so that it recognizes them, but it's been a little tension. So if they come and get mad at the map, please have them call me directly. I should put my business card right up there. But yeah, this region was definitely part of the Wampanoag territory, and I'm gonna need my water again.
I'll get you.
But was that your question?
Yeah, it's just I've seen reading Phillips, Mayflower, and doing some of my own history. I know that this region here, it's kind of a controversy. I don't know if Mary Ann should part of following the question. There was a lot of different regions that fell underneath the
Well, and I think that because just prior to colonization, there was that Great Plague, wherein I think I was telling Drew about, there's actually a mention in a couple of the journals, but I know it's in Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation, where they are walking through, I think it would be at least close to this region, where they're going to Soams, and they would walk through these, what had been home sites or villages, and the bones of the dead are just strewn about, because the people died of the plague so quickly that they didn't have time to bury their loved ones. They just died where they lay. So there was quite a bit of that. That's another piece of the history that, when you talk about marginalization, the Mayflower passengers who survived and actually built their village in Patuxet, which they pretty immediately called Plymouth, had to sweep away the bleached bones of the dead in order to build their homes. And they don't talk about that. So if you can just imagine, that's what they came to. They stepped off the rock and there's dead people everywhere. Yes, sir.
Of course, I'm not sure it's all talking about, your ancestors. Is there a history of the earliest explorers prior to
Vikings. We love Vikings. They were definitely here. There is a recessive gene in our tribe of redheads. I guarantee you the Vikings were here. Yep, them too. And there are some stories of that. that me personally, I recently, I did it for my mom. Yeah, I refuse to give Ancestry.com any of my blood because I know that somehow or another that's going to get sold out there somewhere. It's going to get me arrested for murder or something. I don't know. But we didn't mind doing. My mom is 97 years old, so she has this deep gene pool. And we put her into Ancestry, and we were able to trace my mom's Wampanoag ancestry back to the 1500s, late 1500s. That was fascinating. I don't know if that answers your question, but. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, by the way. It's great to have that.
Oh.
If there's ever a chance that you would share 16 pieces, I would think that.
Share the what?
Share your ideas.
Oh, I'll leave it here for you guys.
But I was thinking, you mentioned a lot of different sources. What are the different sources? What are some of the sources that other, like, Wampanoag sources that you use to piece together?
You mean?
Not written by.
Well, some of it is just our oral history. And I have a great deal of respect for our oral historians. Earlier today I was talking to Drew. Did I tell you about the stone wall? Who was I talking to about the stone wall? Maybe it wasn't you. Anyway, as a young woman, I worked with a mentor who is passed on now, but the history that she gives me that is passed on from her generation, her previous generation, and the generation before her is invaluable. And it teaches us about our cultural and spiritual ways in a way that nobody can write down into a book. And it's passed on really as a measure of pride. And there is a lot of that in what I write. And I recently had to produce a piece that was for a really stuffy, scholarly group. And there was pieces in there about spirituality, and they said, well, you didn't cite your source. And I said, I'm not gonna. But trust me. And sometimes that just has to be the answer. Trust me, I know this. And some of the things that this mentor of mine knew, she knew because they came to her in dreams. And one of the things was, it was when they were first starting to build the exhibits at Plymouth Plantation for the Wampanoag home site. And they hadn't really mapped it out, what it was going to look like or what the materials were to be used, and they were doing some research. And so while all of the book nerds are over, researching and getting all this information, Ella was dreaming. And she woke up one day and she started sketching out, here's the way it's going to look, and here's the materials we need to use, and they said, yeah, okay, good. And then after a few months of digging through the books, they came up with the identical plan, the same thing that she said had come to her in her dream. So there's a lot to be said for what we pass on to one another in that way, and I think that that's as important as the stuff that I dig out of dusty journals. Yes, ma'am.
I originally came from Whitman and was a friend or acquaintance of Russell Gardner. I don't know if you knew him.
Yeah.
A historian from Whitman. And he told us that, my Girl Scout troop, he told us that Indians did not live in the Whitman area, probably not much in the Hanson area, because they were too smart. It was a swampy, and they had more sense than the white people. So we'll also answer the question about Indian head. I think Alan Clemens can tell you he has found many Indian head arrows.
Right.
Here in McQuanton, probably down in Indian Head area. And so that's one of the reasons the name may be here, because this was a hunting area.
Right.
Where people didn't want to.
Well, that makes perfect sense, what you're saying. You wouldn't live where you hunt. And the swamp areas were a prime area for hunting, so that could explain why. I don't know anything about Hanson.
Yes, Ellen?
Yes.
This area at one time was 1,000 acres. It encompassed the pond and the Pembroke ponds. And it was reserved for the Indians, and everything else around it was sold. But of course, as you can imagine, like, things went on, and pretty soon this all got sold off. But the Indians had a camp at the north end of this pond. A lot of Indian artifacts were picked up there, and I picked up a lot of them around the pond, the water was wall. And so they apparently camped in this area here. They apparently went back and forth from the Pembroke Pond to here, and then headed west to Robbins Pond, which is another Indian camp.
Well, just consider that if it's a delightful place for you to be with your family and swimming with your children for you, just imagine how delightful it was for those Wampanoag families and their children to go to. And maybe they just camped out for a few months in the summer and then went somewhere else. But, you know, we didn't have Airstreams, but you could go these different places. Yes?
Grinding stone necessarily indicate the presence of the tribe?
It sure would. The grinding stones were very commonly used, mortar and pestles and grinding stones for various purposes. Yeah, you should probably be finding a lot of that. Yes, sir.
There was a trail that went from Pembroke Pond over to Robbins Pond. I went along that trail in the woods, conservation land. It's a big rock. It's got a hollow.
Right.
Apparently soft stone. And that's always been known as the Indian grindstone. Apparently they would put the corn in there.
And grind it up.
The rock and grind it up. And apparently they did that on the way of the travel, but it's along the trail.
Yep, that would make perfect sense.
So it's 2019. How is your progression going? How is your advocacy? How is the respect from the government and really get back? How hard is the struggle still?
The struggle is real. Yes. And, you know, I focus a lot less on, you know, the governmental things. I really pulled back from that. My father was a tribal chairman for many, many years, so I was right in the thick of all that tribal politics, which if you think your politics are ugly, just, you know, tribal politics can get really, really crazy. But I'm really proud of what my father was able to achieve in his lifetime. I wish that he had survived long enough to see our federal recognition. I was truly an advocate for that over the many years. I opposed any affiliation with gaming backers, and so I was a small minority of tribe members that really pulled away from that, although the tribe overall thought that that was the panacea that, you know, was going to bring wealth and land and return all the riches to the tribe, which of course it never will. So, I mean, I kind of pull away from that, and I feel like focusing my efforts more on preserving our history and our traditions and our language and things like that is a better place for me to be. I don't think that my fellow tribe members who tried so hard to establish a good measure of economic development in whatever way they were choosing to do, that wasn't necessarily wrong for them to do, but it didn't work out. And in the meantime, I just do kind of what I do. And in terms of advocacy, I mean, this opportunity to work with the Plymouth 400 and to produce this exhibit has actually given us, one of the things I said to tribe members who objected to us getting involved because of Wamsutta's experience and what happened back in 1970, I said, you know, we're very rarely going to have this opportunity to get on an international platform and be able to speak about our history and bring our history to the forefront in this way. And that's really what has been happening. In the last couple of years, I've made 3 trips to London. I've met with people in England about their exhibits that they're producing there and informed them on how they should be presenting the Wampanoag story, which is a huge opportunity. Not just for me personally. I mean, I don't need a star on my forehead for doing this, but I'm bringing forward all the work that's been done from other Wampanoag scholars, and they're working with me as well. And I also am working on a project to restore the wampum belt tradition to our people. One of the things that occurred at the end of King Philip's War, when King Philip was killed, they took from him his wampum belt, which is a tribal treasure beyond what you could imagine. It would be like taking the crown off the queen's head and running away with it. That wampum belt, which is considered to be like a historical document of our people, was about 9 feet long and 9 inches wide of solid wampum beads that had images on it, and each of those images was part of a story. And so it's our history. The belt was taken to England in 1676, 77, around that time, and then it sort of dropped off the map. So we've been looking for that belt for 300 years. We'd like to find that belt and get it back in our people's hands. But nobody seems to know where it is. And I said, well, one of the reasons they don't know where it is because people in England haven't a clue what wampum is, for one thing. And they haven't a clue what a wampum belt looks like. So the British Arts Council is funding us to produce a wampum belt made by Wampanoag citizens, so we're all coming together to do that. It will be on display in England for several months before it comes back here and becomes our community treasure. I would never have had that opportunity had I not stepped up onto this platform and be doing what I'm doing now. So I'm happy to be doing it. Yeah, one more back here and then over here. Yes.
I don't feel Clemens is here tonight, but he has brought several people to the gorge, which is the stream between Hanover and Hanson and also goes on Pembroke. And there's a lot of indigenous people, maybe Wampanoag, I'm not sure, stones and things in that gorge area. Maybe some other people have been to that area. And I know there's some stuff in the forest too. But I know the gorge has a lot of history. I don't know that the Phil was here, he was talking.
Stones, you said?
Yeah.
Like headstones?
Like, you mentioned the grinding stones.
Oh, grinding stones,
But
yeah.
I'm not sure what stones were there, but I remember him, like, it's been a while, it's been like 20 years, but
Yeah.
I remember him telling me. I knew that. I don't want to speak
You're referring to Rocky Run, which is at the point where the northeast corner of Hanson, the vertical drop, I say 50 feet from the top of the cliff down into the Indian Head River. There's a lot of stonework there. I don't know how much would be Native American and how much would be colonial, because there's a lot of industrial activity there, and I think some of the stonework might be colonial.
Right.
I'm not sure what might be Native American.
That's kind of hard to tell. This has been an archaeological heaven for people like James Dietz was here for a long time. He was the director of Plymouth Plantation, famed archaeologist, and he brought many people, students up to investigate this area. I know it's really rich, especially the undisturbed areas. And you had a question.
The question is, as a non-native and white person, are there things that you wish that we would be doing about, just ways that we could be supportive of the culture and the
Right.
tribe?
Well, I mean, the saddest thing for us right now is that our land into trust, because of all the political fighting over the casino in Taunton, our land into trust everywhere has been called into question, and So the trust land that we have in Mashpee, which trust land is the equivalent of, it's our reservation, is now called into question. And I don't understand all of the legal wranglings and stuff. I lived through the process. We first petitioned for federal acknowledgement in 1974. And in 2007, it finally came to pass. That process to become federally acknowledged is, I believe, the most cumbersome and expensive legal litmus test known to man. My father in 1996 brought 30,000 pages of documentation to Washington, D.C., and it sat in the basement of the Bureau of Indian Affairs for probably the better part of a decade. And they didn't do anything with it until we got money for lobbyists and lawyers. And that happened actually, and probably around 2000, when at that point it became necessary for the tribe to align themselves with gaming backers, because they were the only ones with the money who could support the effort to get those boxes out of the basement of the BIA, because you needed lobbyists. You can't do anything in Washington, D.C. without a lobbyist. So even though we had all of our papers in a row and we had everything that we needed, they weren't even going to look at them until somebody banged on the door of the right congressman. And so I'm not sure what people can do. You know, you can be outraged. You can be angry, because, I mean, I'm angry, but I'm calm about it now, because jumping up and down at my age, I just turned 60 this year, and I can't jump up and down and pound my fists. And that's what I was saying to someone today about the ignorance being the stone wall. And this is one of the things my mentor taught me. She said, you know, ignorance is just like a stone wall. If you ball up your fists and you pound at that wall, you're going to come away, and all you have for it is bloody fists. But if you take the stones down one at a time, you'll start to see the light on the other side. So on that, I say thank you. Thank you to having me here.
All right. I hope everybody enjoyed this evening's presentation. We are selling 50/50 raffles for a few more minutes in the back of the room, and Ann's back there. I just want to go over a few thank yous, and so feel free to get up and get some tickets. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that went on to make this dinner happen. On behalf of the 200th Anniversary Committee, we would like to thank the following people. League of Mesh, thank you for applying for and being awarded a grant to help defray the cost of the Plymouth's 400th Wampanoag exhibit for the month of August at the Thomas Mill. Lee has been our voice informing everyone about this event through her interview with the Whitman Hanson Express. I'd like to thank Lori Cook from Fork in the Road, who provided a delicious barbecue dinner. All the folks who provided the wonderful desserts. Everyone who brought in a raffle item. Our bartender from Bartending Services of New England in Middleborough. Joe Bina from Eagle Linens for donating our tablecloths. Bob, I'm probably going to say name wrong, Pearl, from the Duo Cruisin' for our sound system. I'd like to thank Camp Kiwanee for giving us a venue. Ann Merlin, who made all these beautiful centerpieces. And I'd like to thank once again Paula Peters, our fantastic and very knowledgeable guest speaker tonight. Let's give her a big hand again. And last but certainly not least, all of our guests here tonight, thank you for your support and helping us get ready for Hanson's 200th anniversary in 2020. Please spread the word about the upcoming events. We'll be having the exhibit in the Thomas Mill the whole month of August. We're going to be open I think we're going to be 3 days a week. I think it's Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We're going to be working out the times and schedule and stuff like that. So thank you for coming.